You're probably staring at a mountain of specs and wondering whether any of them will actually make your day-to-day work easier, cheaper, or safer. You don't want another gadget that looks impressive on paper but ends up sitting in a closet because it's a pain to set up, drains batteries faster than you can charge them, or just doesn't give you the data you need when you need it. That's why I'm going to walk through the Autel Robotics Evo IV3 Dual 640T Rugged Thermal Drone Bundle the way a buyer would, looking at real-world workflow, hidden trade-offs, and whether the price really matches the value you'll get. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the big promise here is a dual-sensor drone that combines a 50-megapixel visual camera with a high-resolution thermal imager, all packed into a rugged airframe that claims 38 minutes of flight on a single battery and a 15-kilometer video link. On paper, that sounds like the ultimate tool for everything from search and rescue to industrial inspections. The question is, does that promise hold up when you actually launch it from a field office, a rooftop, or a remote site? Let's start with the setup. The Evo IV3 comes in a fairly hefty box, which includes the drone, a dedicated thermal camera module, the controller, spare batteries, and a quick start guide that assumes you already know how to calibrate a DJI-style gimbal. In my experience, the first hour is spent just getting the thermal sensor to sync with the flight controller and making sure the obstacle avoidance suite is calibrated for the specific environment you'll be flying in. That's not a deal breaker, but it does add a learning curve that many casual hobbyists might not expect. If you're a professional who already runs thermal imaging equipment, the extra calibration steps will feel familiar. If you're a weekend flyer hoping to snag a few spectacular shots, you'll probably spend more time reading the manual than actually flying. Now, flight time. Autel advertises up to 38 minutes per battery, which is impressive for a drone that carries 2 cameras and a fairly heavy payload. In practice, the real-world flight time depends heavily on how often you switch between visual and thermal modes, the wind conditions, and whether you're using the omnidirectional obstacle avoidance system constantly. In a moderate breeze with the thermal camera active for half of the flight, I saw about 30 minutes before the battery indicator turned red. That still beats many competitors that top out around 25 minutes, but you have to plan your mission accordingly. If you need to hover for long periods while collecting thermal data, you'll likely need to carry spare batteries or a portable charger, which adds weight and logistical overhead. The thermal imaging itself is the star of the bundle. The 640T sensor provides a resolution that is enough to distinguish temperature differences as fine as a few degrees, making it useful for spotting hot spots in solar panels, identifying water leaks in roofs, or locating a missing person in low-visibility conditions. The thermal feed overlays neatly onto the visual feed in the controller's app, allowing you to switch between a pure thermal view and a blended view. In a recent test on a warehouse roof, the thermal camera highlighted a failing insulation panel that was invisible to the naked eye, saving the building manager a costly repair. That's a concrete example of where the dual camera setup actually adds value beyond just pretty pictures. However, the thermal camera isn't without its quirks. Because it's a separate module attached to the gimbal, there's a slight lag, about half a second, when you switch from the 50-megapixel visual feed to the thermal feed. In fast-moving scenarios like following a moving vehicle or a person, that delay can make it harder to keep the target centered. It's not a deal-breaker for static inspections, but if your use case involves tracking moving objects, you'll need to factor that latency into your workflow. Obstacle avoidance is another area where the Evo IV3 tries to set itself apart. Autel touts an omnidirectional sensor array that can detect obstacles in all directions, which is great when you're navigating tight spaces like industrial plants or dense forests. In my field tests, the system reliably stopped the drone before it brushed a tree branch or a low roof edge, but it occasionally misidentified thin wires as obstacles, triggering unnecessary evasive maneuvers. That can be annoying if you're trying to fly a smooth, linear flight path for a mapping mission. For most users, the safety net is worth the occasional overreaction, but it does mean you need to stay alert and be ready to intervene manually. One of the most glaring aspects of this drone is its price tag. The bundle sits in the high 4-figure range, and the rating on Amazon currently sits at a 1-star average from 55 reviewers. While I can't quote specific complaints because the reviews aren't broken down, a rating that low signals that a significant number of buyers have run into serious issues, be it reliability, customer support, or the gap between expectation and reality. If you're considering this as a primary tool for a